Hi everybody, my name is Peder and I work at E.ON, the utility company, with our Sustainable City program. And I will give you a little bit of the glimpse in what we do in a city district, Hyllie, which I'm sure many of you know, and it's very close to Denmark. It's the last station coming from Malmö, going over the bridge to Copenhagen. But I will start off by explaining a little bit the background to the work we are carrying out there. So we are at the crossroads and the development is going very rapidly. We see energy transformation going on towards more renewable energy and more efficient use of energy through the whole value chain. And we need that. We have very clear drivers, as we hear today. We have climate change that we need to cope with. We have very ambitious politicians, both on local level and national level and international level. And what I think is very clear in our work when we focus on cities, and there of course we have a lot of challenges, is that the local governmental, such as municipalities, they have very ambitious targets in how the city will meet the challenges and also show the way in how we cope with these problems. What does that lead then in a utility company perspective? We face a lot of challenges with this transition. One of them is more intermittent. Let's see if that was the wrong one. More intermittent generation, renewable energy. You can't really choose when the wind blows or the sun shines. So we need to cope with that. We also see that there are a lot of new loads coming into the energy system, not at least on the electricity side, such as electric vehicles. Everybody coming home, plugging in the electric vehicle, putting it on their induction stove. This will create quite a challenging peak in our power grids. We also see new variation, demand variations. Customers are starting to produce their own energy. In a certain time of the day, they have a net production, and then on the other time in the same day, they have a net consumption. So how do we cope with these variations? We need to see how we could do that in a smart way. And one thing is to see how we could use existing technology in a new way, but also see how we could create the right solutions to utilize the existing infrastructure we have in as good manner as possible. And that is utilizing what we see coming now on the digital side, use information technology in a new way, to be better at monitoring what is happening in the grids, better to create an interaction between the consumption side of the energy system and the production side. So we could start to harmonize these a little bit. And then we can better utilize the renewable energy when it's available. And that's what we're thinking and doing in Hyllie. We want to create this window into the future in showing solutions for how we cope with these challenges. Sorry for the text, I see it's been jumping around a bit. But the work with Hyllie, it started with the city of Malmö, invited the infrastructure owners in the city in a dialogue. E.ON is one of them, and also Via Syd, who is the local water and waste company in Malmö. And we discussed how Hyllie could show the way of the rest of Malmö, meeting the very ambitious environmental targets the city have set. And also how Hyllie could be used as a demonstration and test bed for these new technologies. And we signed a climate contract in 2011 where we outlined these ambitions. Hyllie will be the most climate smart city in the Öresund region and also be a global role model for how we work with sustainable city development. And this was narrowed down in a number of different targets. And what I think is very important with this is an ambition targets, but it sets very clear goals, how we work together towards those. And we also have a very clear roadmap on what our different parties in this contract should contribute with, and also formulating these targets so they are measurable. But it's all about creating a good energy supply for the area, which will consist of 100% renewable or recycled energy. I will come back to why recycling is important in this. Smart grids to be able to harmonize consumption and production, as I told you about. And when we talk about smart grid functionality, it's not only about power. We see it as an integrated energy system. So it also includes district cooling, district heating, and also what's interesting is the opportunities maybe on the gas grid side. I jump forward. So in the climate contract, we set some general principles about the supply model for the area and the energy solution that we will work towards. And what is quite important with this is that we will see Hyllie as an integrated part of its surrounding, not an isolated island where we stuck a lot of new technology and without considering what are the regional and the local prerequisites. One is a very well-developed infrastructure, waste management infrastructure, and how could we make use of that? But also, when it comes to Hyllie, as a very interesting place in testing things, it's a new build area, so we could get the right things in a very early stage of the city planning process. And also, we have a lot of different segments represented, and how could we see where the synergies are between these different segments. For example, if there's a surplus of energy in one segment, how could we use the infrastructure to connect that surplus where there's a need in another segment? So everything here we calculate. We estimate in a very well calculation what will the energy demand be for this area. And also, how could we utilize the rest flows that this area generates as in a good manner as possible? And one thing is to see waste as a resource, both when it comes to the part that comes to incineration. But firstly, how could we get as much of the organic compound out of the waste to generate biogas, which then is fed back to the area as value in terms of renewable fuel for a transportation need. So we also developed a filling station to meet this demand for a renewable transportation solution. We also then, with this energy balance, see that we need to bring some additional energy to the area. So we're developing wind production to meet the electricity demand. We also restarted a biofueled heat plant in Malmö to meet the demand of renewable district heating. And we are developing a district cooling grid which utilizes the groundwater sinkage in Hyllie, which will make it even more efficient to supply renewable cooling for the area. But we also have a focus on how we test these new solutions that we need to have in order to make sure that we could cope with this transition of our energy system. And we have divided in a number of different focus areas. We work with smart homes to see how we could involve the consumers in the future energy system. What we see from that is that it's very important to work with the cost base. The solutions need to be very cheap. They need also to bring something back to the user, an incentive. We also work with smart building to see how the building's processes could be made more efficient by information such as weather prognosis and so forth, but also how it could be integrated with the energy system. For example, how we could use the buildings in Netchat to store thermal energy and use that possibility in order to optimize on the system level. So we could manage, for example, our district heating grid in a manner that is as sustainable as possible. I told you about integrated smart grids, but I think that is also one very important aspect. How could we use the flexibility in having a number of infrastructure in place? For example, when it comes to power to heat, power to cooling, waste to gas, and use those synergies that enable us to have that. So this is one of the components we worked with in Hyllie and developed. We tried it in a number of years now. It's one important part of the smart grid platform that we deployed in Hyllie. We call it Energy Manager, and it's a very cheap computer which you integrate to the buildings automation system. And this is something that the development of digital technology gives us now. Cheap computers. And this enables us to create this bridge between the production side and the consumption side. So we can start to communicate with the buildings. Not just supply the energy after demand without speaking to each other, but starting to helping each other. And this then, of course, makes it possible to optimize and use a number of connected buildings to see how could this city district enables value that goes beyond the district to the city. We have a number of buildings connected in Hyllie, and we're also rolling out tests now with the system in other areas of Malmö. And what of course is very important in that aspect also is to see how this functionality works with existing buildings, not only new produced buildings. So this is a high-level architecture model of the smart grid platform that we developed. But it consists of a back-end system where we get data, price data, weather data. We could put in prognosis on power prices and so forth there. And through this, we could, via the Energy Manager, communicate with the building's different automation system and react with them to set different set points in the building. And we have a number of buildings connected, as I said, and also trying some different business models around this, because it's not only to get the technology to work, you also need to have the right incentive structure. And I think that is something that is very important with rolling out these trials in a live environment, to do it with customers that maybe ask the questions that you're not really prepared for, and testing the incentive structure and getting the logic in the business model. So we work with commercial buildings, residential buildings, and some other, like the arena in Hyllie, also connected to this system. Round up a little bit before my time is ended. What we see in the future of this is also, we have a lot of learnings that we from this project, and I think it's very important to emphasize the need to work together around these concepts. And the cities, the municipalities have a very important role to take the leadership and coordinating projects like this. And I think projects like this creates a lot of value because it pushes the development forward. One other key stakeholder in this is the developers and the building owners. They have a very important key role to play here, because a lot of the things need to be worked out together with them, and a lot of the solutions are in the buildings. So if we can't work with them, we can't only meet half of the solution, I would say. And also, this is a very, very important thing for us. How does this digitalization that we are in now, how could we work with it, and what kind of new services and could we create from that? But also, how could we make our processes more efficient? And this is the focus on our continual work with Hyllie now. How could we utilize the opportunity to get real-time data from different levels in the city. On consumer level, we can operate different processes and see that is things working as it should be, how much local generation from the photovoltaics is feeding out to the grid. We need to know that in order to secure that we also keep the quality on the energy that we supply. So a little bit glimpse on what we're doing here, and also focus on bringing it to a scalable level. Scalability is also important, and how we work with the existing building stocks. And tests are going on that now also. Thank you very much.
Wonderful, thank you. Any reflections from the audience? Some questions? Other energy companies? Yes, over here.
Yes, I think that Hyllie has drawn a lot of companies, has drawn them towards you. So you have a success in who is coming and building. And how much do you think this approach is crucial for when they're choosing their location? Is this a key factor, do you think, this new thinking?
We actually did this practice last week where we had a meeting with all the developers. And I think 1/4 of them said that sustainability and development is a reason for being active here, or maybe a reason for also taking part of development efforts. And one thing that I think is important there, of course, very clear defined ambition from the municipalities, but also if you bring in external funding, helps lowering the threshold for actually doing some new investments. And also seeing that this is a platform where we could work together and in collaboration see how we innovate new solutions, and just having that very well communicated, I also helps.
We're one question away from lunch, so hang in there. Yvonne, any reflections from you?
The people living in Hyllie in the future, what is the biggest difference for them in their everyday life?
I think, I hope it will be like it's going to be very easy to live sustainable. So I think a lot of the efforts, and also where we work together, the different parties, not at least in the climate contract, is quite much about that. It should be easy to do the right decisions. So in some cases you need a tool for that. Sometimes you only need to have the good decisions in front of you. For example, a very well-developed local transportation solution. For example, electrification of transportation. If you don't have anywhere to charge your e-vehicle, maybe you don't get an e-vehicle. So maybe that example could be an answer on that.
Great. Thank you so much, Peder, for sharing your experiences with us.
Thank you very much.